It's the early 1980s, and Jimmy Page is reportedly lost. But he's been spending some time at the home studio of his friend Paul Rodgers, where they're playing and recording some music. Now, a fortuitous dropping out of Steve Winwood from the Arms tour leads to an invitation to Rodgers to sing with Page. Their success together is something that Page wants to prolong, so he pulls Rodgers into a 2-album, 2-tour collaboration. Additions of drummer Chris Slade and bassist Tony Franklin would fill out The Firm, the band that Jimmy Page credits with saving him. The band was in the studio in 1984, and even before the eponymous first album was released, they were touring, playing songs from what would be their first and second albums, Page's soundtrack from the movie Death Wish 2, and Rodgers' solo album. Notably, they didn't play any songs from Free or Bad Company or Led Zeppelin. This was a new musical entity that would find gold or coal on its own merits. Paul Rodgers, best known for his time with Free and Bad Company, was so respected that in the 70s, he apparently had been sought by bands as diverse as The Doors and Deep Purple. In The Firm, his sonorous, bluesy voice and dynamic style were somehow a perfect complement to the treble-rich, flangey, often dark, and a bit death-wishy sound that Page preferred. Drummer Chris Slade from Uriah Heep and Tom Jones, if you can believe it, was solid, powerful, playing with gated reverb on the snares and modern tones on the toms. In 1990, he went on to tour with AC/DC and record on Razor's Edge and the Big Guns albums. Inject the influence of Tony Franklin, who fully embraced the musical, fashion, and hairstyles of the time, and the sound of the band had a hard rock soul with a touch of 80s pop, jazz, fusion, and glam. Though called the fretless monster for his bass playing, Franklin is indeed a multi-instrumentalist, the best musician you never heard kind of a guy, and his work on the keyboards identifies the Firm clearly as an 80s entity. Due to the power of Rodgers and Page, the release of the first album was a big deal. I recall hanging out with friends to listen to 1027 WNEW play the album in its entirety. Most popular on the album was the single Radioactive. Its memorable alien guitar part was actually played by Paul Rodgers. It was a finger exercise taught to him. While some people hate it, I love it. I think its apparent random tonality really reflects the randomness of radioactive decay. But I'm a geek. Overall, the albums might be described as somewhat radio-friendly. They were a mix of, I'd say, 4 different types of songs. Ballads like You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling and Together. Contemporary singles like Radioactive and All the King's Men. There were driving, riffy, and somewhat dark songs like Fortune Hunter. But then there are what you might call compositions. Real complex, dynamic, and atmospheric pieces of rock and roll such as Midnight Moonlight, Satisfaction Guaranteed, and even Money Can't Buy and Rodgers Live in Peace. And for those ballads, Page dug deep into his heart for sweet, respectful, appropriate, and meaningful solos, especially on the cover of You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling. Really beautiful. Some of Page's most melodic, and he uses the B-bender quite effectively in verses of Together. So we really get a chance to see some of Page's versatility on these ballads. And Rodgers' voice, well, the soulful stuff sits right in his wheelhouse. I'd say that Franklin's fretless is a little too snappy for You Got That Lovin' Feeling, but seems more in place on Together. But for me, the albums would be good, but nothing special if not for the compositions, as I call them. Page's Midnight Moonlight really takes us on a journey that Page has mapped out wonderfully. The music is, in my mind, quite visual, conjuring places, times, atmospheres, dark forests, foggy moors, and sun rising from behind the seas. These are the things that lay the foundation for extraordinary music and concert experiences. But the song, like the albums in total, is really let down by the lyrics. Satisfaction Guaranteed also effectively creates a complex environment, a rich, steamy atmosphere reinforced by the video in which the band plays at Les's place, a South American cantina replete with palm fronds and sweat. Page said of the set, "It's so sleazy, I could live in it." But if there's one thing that unites most, if not all the songs, is dynamics. The songs generally provide us with surprises of sorts as the songs subtly or massively deviate from what's expected. We hear a sophisticated example of slight but very effective change in the slick shift in phrasing in Closer, where becomes. My favorite part on either of the albums demonstrates a dramatic change in feel, even though the underlying chord structure remains the same. As the band approaches the guitar solo for Live in Peace, Rodgers hammers back and forth one bar on E minor and one bar on A, and Franklin holds on an A, but can't help but diddle a little bit. Slade hits the snare on the 3 of each measure, adding to momentum and tension. Page is bending long notes with rich texture and sonic depth. Then, with a slow 8th note roll, Slade unleashes Page into a wider landscape as he starts hitting the snare on the 2 and 4, and the song leaps forward. And the Page solo is perfectly suited to the song. It's melodic, dripping with feeling. You can see Page pursing his lips as he was wont to do, saliva and sweat flying as he squeezes out the notes that are evocative of nostalgia. So, The Firm, a really good band, fantastic music, creative music, dynamic music, some really nice pieces of rock history in there. A little let down, unfortunately, by the lyrics, but a great experience. Check out the albums. I think you'll like them.